Hello everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Intellectual Combat. I am Joe Archino, joined as always by Mike Doody. We want to thank everyone for all of your support of episode 2 with Dan Duva. Really had a great time with him. And Mike, the great guests just keep on coming. We have got another really special one today. You do your thing. You tell us who we've got today.
Absolutely. So today is a very special show in that we have Guy Benson, an old friend and colleague of mine from high school, who we were lucky enough to get onto our airtime for a few questions. So Guy is a contributor on Fox News. He's a political editor on townhall.com and a talk radio host. Guy's early career included him being one of the individuals and really one of the catalysts to the Ridgewood High School having such a strong and innovative news and radio element. And I remember countless times that Guy was alongside his counterpart, Dan Duva, and the two of them were broadcasting our sports games. But you could always see that Guy really always had a knack for radio, and he's just a very intellectually sound guy. I never had a shadow of a doubt that he would amount to something incredible and special, and he's surely proven that to be factual. So without further ado, Guy, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. It's tough to follow up on Dan Duva. It's tough to beat him, but I'll try.
Well, Dan said so many cool things about you and told us some really great stories. So that's where I want to start today, actually. So you guys really at Ridgewood High School did so many great things with RHS TV, calling sports games. And one of the really cool stories Dan told us about is when you guys both went up to Doc Emmerich, gave him your micro cassette recordings for feedback. So for you, I kind of want to ask, how important was that moment in all of your early moments and kind of laying the foundation to become the successful broadcaster that you are today?
Well, it was hugely important because having the incredible good fortune to meet someone in my grade in middle school who had similar ambitions and similar drive to really try to start something together, it was so much easier to do it with two people, sort of a partnership moving forward on this stuff, than it would have been if it were just me. And, Dan, of course, has gone on to really great things in the sports broadcasting world, now in the National Hockey League. So not only was it just sort of that fortuitous timing and that propitious moment in my personal story and Dan's as well, I think also once we got the ball rolling, Mike just alluded to it, we covered so many Ridgewood High School sporting events across multiple sports, and couple that with our broadcasting in the Cape Cod Baseball League during the summers. By the time we had graduated from college, we had separately and together been on the air for hundreds of hours. And I think that sort of allowed me early on in my career to sort of perhaps get over some of the anxiety or fear and self-doubt about whether you have a presence on the air and that sort of thing, because I've been doing it since I was 14 years old and had logged hundreds of hours on the air. And that was almost all sports. It wasn't necessarily politics, but I sort of there's the craft of broadcasting and getting across a message and interacting with an audience. There's a performative side of it as well, and I felt like I got a lot of incredible experience under my belt in Ridgewood, thanks not just to Dan, but really the whole group of people at Ridgewood High School, the community, the parents who were so supportive, not just our parents, but parents of athletes who would watch the broadcasts. It was a really special and unique opportunity in my teenage years to really start building, at least in my own mind, a resume or a demo tape.
Absolutely. And you really built the foundation there, man. You truly did. And I'm a huge fan. I watch you all the time on Fox and whenever I have a second. And I'm always in awe of what you've become and how fluid you are with your words on the air. But question number 2, Guy. You're a big sports guy and even spent time covering Big Ten, college athletics, and the Cape Cod Baseball League. Today, you're obviously one of the most influential millennial broadcasters in American news and politics. Did you ever want to be a sports broadcaster more than a news and political commentator? And how did you decide between these two passions?
Yeah, so, the answer is definitely yes. The goal for years was to go into sports broadcasting and doing play-by-play. And that was very much my focus, not just at Ridgewood, but also at Northwestern, where I went to college, member of the Big Ten Conference, and I was calling football games, basketball games. I was one of the only people on our radio staff who had seen a lacrosse game. So when our women's lacrosse team just went on fire and won 3 national championships in a row, I called 2 of them because no one else knew lacrosse at all.
Sure.
So that was very much the end point in my mind, the destination professionally on the sports side of things. But I also did have a passion for politics that dated back even to middle school. I was definitely an early nerd on that front as well, and did some internship activity during my end of high school, early college at Fox News. I did a right versus left sort of debate radio show weekly on campus when I was at Northwestern. I would write occasional columns or op-eds for the school newspaper. I was making contacts and sort of networking with folks in the political world as well. And Mike, what it really came down to was I'm such a type A personality in terms of planning. I like to have my steps set in advance. And I had this uncomfortable feeling my senior year of college where I really didn't know what was going to be next in my life. And it was unsettling. There was grad school opportunities. There was, do I try to join the Big Ten network at some sort of low level? Do I go to a local community and become a local sports broadcaster? I wasn't quite sure what the correct decision would be. And my senior year spring, probably around May, I would say, was the Women's College World Series was going on in Oklahoma City. Northwestern was in it, and I was out there covering it for WNUR, our radio station, and I got an email out of the blue from a stranger who was a Northwestern alum, who had read a profile piece about me in the alumni magazine. They sometimes choose, I think every year they choose 10 or so seniors to profile before they graduate, and I was very fortunate to be selected as one of them. This guy was the programming director at a major news talk radio station in Chicago. He was an alum.
Wow.
And they had an opening for a production job to produce a show. And he also knew, based on what he had read, that my goal, my ambition was not to be a producer, but to be on the air. He said, look, if you were to take this job, hypothetically, would you be interested if we gave you a weekend show of your own? Of course, I'm 22 years old. The answer in Market 3, Chicago, the answer is obviously yes. I could stay in Chicago. So many of my friends were there. And so in some ways, I went in, I interviewed, I put together a demo tape for them of my political side of things, and they hired me pretty quickly.
Wow.
And that made the decision for me. My first bona fide job offer came for a job I had not sought in an area that I was very much considering pursuing at some point. I said, if sports doesn't work out, I really do care about politics a lot. I think it's consequential. Sports, I can remain a huge sports fan and use that sort of as an escape from the craziness, which I definitely still do.
Sure.
But his name was Marcus Brown, and the parent company that he hired me into is a national company, and I actually still, in one of my jobs, work for that same company. My goodness, 12 years later here. So sometimes you can plan and you can plot and you can do everything that you possibly can do within your own power, and you just need fortune or some sort of divine intervention to smile on you and get a break. And that was my break.
No, that's awesome.
It really is interesting, and it's one of those questions where I think a lot of people are in a similar position like that at times, where they come up through sports, and when you develop that skill set in the media, and then you're comfortable with it, you move on to other things. And it's really interesting to hear how you got to where you are today. And where you are today is at places like as the political editor at townhall.com, a Fox News contributor, an author, and the recipient of numerous distinctions and awards. You've really established an impressive body of work and earned credibility as one of the youngest and most recognizable conservative voices in American news and politics today. What motivates you to stand at the forefront of today's issues, and what kind of responsibility do you feel to uphold conservative values at a time when certain parts of our society seem to be drifting further and further to the extreme left?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do it because I genuinely do care. It's not performance art. I think there are some people who get into this game whether it be politics or political writing or broadcasting, where they just want to sort of be famous, and whatever it takes to get there and sort of make a splash, stir the pot, that sort of thing. They'll do that, and that's not everyone. There's plenty of very good people who are in it for all the right reasons.
Does AOC ring a bell?
Go ahead.
I said, does AOC ring a bell?
Well, I mean, I think she genuinely believes what she says.
Sure.
I think that she doesn't know enough when it comes to a lot of our history. I think that some of her positions are ignorant. I think some of them are just wrong-headed. But I think that she is genuine in her belief that this sort of far-left pursuit of sort of a hybrid socialist program would be good for the country, and I just strongly disagree. And I want to take her on, and those of her colleagues who agree with her, I want to take them on with ideas, and have a good debate if that's possible. I think our debate is often very dysfunctional in this country. That was, you mentioned, you sort of glanced upon the book End of Discussion, which I co-authored a couple of years ago with Mary Catherine Ham. That was really the thrust of the book, talking about how we are less and less able to even talk to each other in a way that's rational. And I think that, if anything, the problem is getting worse. But I do it because I love it. It's because I care about it. If I were doing some other job, if I were a lawyer or a banker or whatever else I possibly could be doing, I would still be, sitting there on my Twitter feed during my lunch hour trying to get as much info as I can and weighing in, and I'd be doing it all anyway. And so I guess it's sort of a great blessing that I can get paid to do it every day, and talk about these things, write about these issues. And my goal is to try to be intellectually honest. Yes, I'm a conservative. I make that very clear. It's been interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the president. I try to call them down the line, depending on how I think he's doing. Right. So if he's doing stuff that I think is good, I'll say it. If I think he's making a mistake, I'll say so. But I try to be fair and honest within the context of being transparent with the audience about where my ideological biases may be, and then try to bring a constructive voice to the national conversation, and hopefully one that, even if people don't agree with me, and even if I drive them crazy sometimes because they don't agree with me, they'll at least be willing to listen to what I have to say or read what I have to write, because I've developed enough of a reputation for being fair, and I try to be honest, and that's really the best you can strive for, because you're never going to have everyone agreeing with you.
Sure, 100%. And I think that's why so many people appreciate watching you, is that you are so fair and balanced, and you really don't toe the party line necessarily, and neither do I. And that's really what people are looking for. I feel like on the right side of the aisle, even more so than the left, I feel like the intersectional hierarchy is just taken over on the left, and it's who can be more radical. And on the right side, at least my experience, I really do want to find that common ground, and I think that you bring a very fair and balanced approach, and it's very appreciated.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say, yes, the intersectionality on the left is something that really bothers me. This sort of identity politics on steroids, where we don't even argue really about issues anymore. It's sort of like, how can we disqualify someone from having an opinion based on some immutable characteristic? I think that's a really toxic thing.
Sure.
And I think it is definitely taking deeper and deeper root on the left, which is a big problem, and it's part of the reason I'm not on the left. But look, I would also just push back very lightly on this point. Based on the audience that we have at Town Hall and at Fox News, we have a terrific audience. I hear from elements of that audience every single day that I am insufficiently loyal to the president, to the party. There are a lot of people on the right who simply, and left, it's sort of human nature. People want to hear their own views sort of parroted back to them, and have themselves sort of feel good and feel righteous and feel like the other side is bad. And any sort of, if you deviate from that line, there's a lot of people who get angry and frustrated, and it's sort of easier, frankly, to just like in this tribalistic era, just to pick the tribe and like learn the talking points and repeat them with sort of a flourish. That model does well for a lot of people, and that's fine. It's just not mine.
No, that's a phenomenal answer. People are communal creatures, and that tribal answer we really hit it on the money there. Guy, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We really appreciate you coming on today. I have one more question for you. What advice do you have for other young broadcasters out there who have a dream and they want to make their voices heard?
Mm-hmm. Well, I got really good advice when I was in college, and it's advice that I often give to younger people. And it's funny because I find myself talking about young people. I'm like, hang on, I'm a young person.
You're a young guy too.
But I was just in Colorado, and I spoke to a group of high school and college students for a nationwide organization. And I mean, I'm definitely, I'm in my mid-30s now. These kids are, in their teens and early 20s. And I mean, that is a significant gap, an experience gap. I mean, I guess technologically,
yeah,
a new generation for me. But I think the advice stands the test of time, and it's not necessarily unique to broadcasting or broadcasters. It sort of cuts across multiple industries, and it's simple, and it might sound trite or cliche, but it's absolutely true. And the first one is work hard and be nice. It is amazing how many people you will have an advantage over if you are both of those things, because there are folks who will be very hard workers, but also be like massive jerks, and difficult to work with, self-unaware, all that sort of thing. Then there'll be delightful, sweet people who are kind of lazy or just want to punch the time card and mail it in.
Sure.
If you're able to sort of marry the two and be someone that people want to work with, people who someone who treats people well and nicely, and also really work your tail off. There's no real shortcut to that, but that will, I think, in the long term, pay dividends. And then the second piece of advice that I think is really important, because I think a lot of people are ambitious, and ambition is really good, and a healthy thing. But I think sometimes people are looking for sort of like a quick, easy shortcut to get from point A to point B where they want to be. And I think that counsel that I got was always do your current job with the most amount of excellence and integrity as you can, because someone is currently paying you to do a job. And if you are constantly looking to climb the ladder and looking for that next rung, and you're sort of ignoring what you're literally being paid and trusted to do at the moment, I think it can rub employers the wrong way. And I think it actually sets you back, because I think the way that I've been able to advance at certain times is, yes, I've had good fortune. Yes, I've had people really be willing to put themselves out there and help me, which I'm very grateful for, and I try to help other people. But people would sort of check in on me and recognize that even though they knew that my eyes were set in at a goal down the path, I would really work very hard for whomever my current boss was in that moment, and do whatever it took, even if it wasn't super exciting or super glamorous. You just did it. And I think sometimes people get impatient and they feel like they deserve to have exactly what they want very soon, and it just doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it does, often it does not. And I think that you want to work hard, be nice, and do your current job very well. And I think people, whether you know it or not, people notice.
Guy, it's amazing, because when we asked Dan the same question on our last episode, you two really have the same philosophy, and you could see how it's paid off so well for you guys, because you're doing incredibly well in your fields. But I really do think, Mike, I mean, you and I kind of looked at each other when he started to say that, because it's almost like, it's that shared type of values that really helps. And I think there's so many young broadcasters out there who are looking for those answers, and these are two guys who know what they're talking about, and if they're saying it, it's very important to listen to.
And these are two guys who put in the extreme work. They have the tact, they have the candor, they have the poise, everything that you need to be on air. They had, and they still have. And you guys really took the proper steps. You truly embody what it is to live the American dream of broadcasting, whether that be in the political section or in the sports broadcasting section. And, we really appreciate you coming on today, man. It's an honor to know you, and we're all extremely proud of you, everyone from Ridgewood and beyond.
Well, that means a lot, Mike, and you know how much I loved growing up in Ridgewood. What a phenomenal town, what a phenomenal community. Ridgewood High School is where all of my siblings graduated from, and we're all proud Maroons, and so very happy to join the show today, and thanks for reaching out. It was really fun.
No, Guy, we wish you all the best in all of your endeavors ahead, and we're hoping one of these days to get you and Dan on together. And both of you are always busy, but I think one day that would make for a really good conversation.
Yeah, well, you definitely need to make some time for like a 2-hour episode. Get the two of us together, and the talking never ends.
Hey, that's A-okay with us, but Guy, once again, thank you so much for being a part of us today. We know how busy you are, and it was a thrill to be able to learn something from you today because you have a lot to offer.
You bet. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks,
you, buddy.
Guy.
All the best.
Well, that was Guy, and just, again, such good stuff. We want to thank him again for giving us the time and coming on the program. And again, if you did want to take a look at his book, it's titled End of Discussion: How the Left's Outrage Industry Shuts Down Debate, Manipulates Voters, and Makes America Less Free and Fun. And of course, you can go on Amazon or anywhere books are sold and find it. But Mike, I mean, you and I think following that up after Dan's interview obviously is perfect because the two of them, the connection they had at high school. But the most telling thing to me from that interview, following it up with Dan, was the fact that they both gave the same advice. Work hard and be nice. It's one of those things where it's a simple concept, but when you really boil it down and think about it, it's not something you hear every day.
No, it's not. And these two were the catalyst that started RHF News and Broadcasting. I mean, it's almost like they were trained by the same person.
It's really cool. And, I think from you being an entrepreneur, and you're obviously in charge of hiring people and things like that, you look at this from a unique perspective. Like, when you look at an employee, going to high school with those guys, you share the same kind of skill sets and values and things like that. I mean, what do you, when you look at an employee like that, how do you determine something like that, their work ethic, their values and stuff like that?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to determine work ethic just based off a resume.
Yeah.
And even from a sit-down interview, it's still hard just to determine work ethic. I think that kind of comes with checking up on them, their background, and actually making the phone calls to the references. That's kind of a different story. I think the work ethic that Guy and Dan display, though, is also from a different time and a different era. And we weren't as technologically advanced like Guy was touching on. So yes. I think that they had to work twice as hard, double time, to actually get the technology correct to be able to broadcast these games.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, you look for the exact stuff that Guy and Dan display: the poise, the candor, the tact, the resourcefulness, the ability to operate autonomously, the time management skills. You look for all of that across the board when you're hiring people. And they have it all. They embody what it means to truly be an entrepreneur in America, and they also embody the American spirit.
Well, it's very true, and it's funny too. When you listen to the way they speak, they speak with such a dignity. I mean, their use of words, their poise, their timing. You could just see how polished they are in everything that they do. And I really love, you and I, we're both big sports guys. So in addition to kind of the other stuff, hearing from these guys who kind of both started the same way with their sports, but one of them kind of continued in the sports route. The other one, you just heard from Guy, how he kind of talked about how he got onto the political side. But I think that really goes to show you how you can have multiple passions and use those passions to take you other places. I mean, I know for you, I mean, you certainly got a lot of different type of passions. And I think a little bit of those things all kind of reflect. Like for me, I started in sports broadcasting, but now I do much more of the military history side of things and stuff like that. And all the experience that I learned in sports broadcasting has helped me tremendously in terms of marketing and just having a voice, telling a story. It's telling a story in sports is similar like telling a story in history. It all relates and it all can be connected with each other.
Sure. And it's great. He was speaking about opportunity. Like you said, his real passion is sports broadcasting. He loves doing it. He loves covering sports. And he also has a big passion for the political side of the aisle, but the political side of the aisle just presented an opportunity, something I've spoke about for years now, how America's the land of opportunity and prosperity.
Yes.
And it's just so true. I mean, when an opportunity presents itself, regardless of if it's a micro passion or if it's your full passion, sometimes you got to take the leap and see where it takes you.
Yes.
And that's exactly what he did.
Well, tying into that, what makes America so great, and I made an observation about the three of you guys all together. So when you listen to Dan, listen to Guy, and when I listen to you in your first interview with Dan Diedrich, who, shout out to him, our first guest on the program, all three of you have that compassion and that focus where you want to help other people. Dan talked about how he takes young broadcasters under his wing and helps them. Guy talked about, too, how he wanted to be out there to help other people, too, doing whatever he can to help people. And you in the first interview with Dan, and I've noticed it just from being around you, I mean, you told him if he ever finds himself this way, he's got a job waiting for him here.
Right.
And you could sense that with you and all of the other guys you served with and all the other people close to you. All three of you have that ability where you are doing very well for yourselves. You've really blazed your own trails, but you're not just looking at yourselves. You're looking, how can I help out the people around me? You don't forget the people who've been on the journey with you. And I think we see a lot of times success comes to people and then they forget about the people who helped them get there. And I think that really is sad when it does happen. But with you three guys, you know, that's an observation that I made, and it's one of the reasons why it's such a pleasure to do this show with you, and to, again, all three of you guys went to the same high school.
Yep.
You can all kind of see you all share those same values, and that all ties into what makes this country so great. I think when we all look out for each other, and we all remember we're on the same team, we don't forget who helped us get to where we are, that's powerful stuff.
100%. It's the opportunity that's being handed out. It's not the work that's being handed out. Everyone has opportunity. It's the exact same thing that I had. So I came on board at RHF and I was given an opportunity through hard work and through drive and through the characteristics and traits that I just mentioned. And I took it. And then down the road, you know, a year or two later, an opportunity presented itself again. You know, we had the investor, so on and so forth. And it's just all about opportunity. And you know what's super funny is one of my investors for a business said the same exact thing. He said, you know, I'm just giving the opportunity back. He had an opportunity. Someone he knew before he got into his line of business had an opportunity. And it's really funny how that works. And it is truly how people look out for each
Yes.
other. Once you have the means, you can give that opportunity to someone else. And that's what it's all about.
Paying it forward.
Paying it forward.
And we heard Dan say it, and Guy and Mike, all you guys are all about that. And it's so good. But that is going to wrap up episode 3 of Intellectual Combat. We thank once again Guy Benson for coming on. Show has been going really well. Want to give a big shout out to Rebecca Matthews, who's been our official photographer.
Rebecca!
So any photo you see on the podcast page, that is her handiwork. So we want to thank her for all of her hard work as well. But once again, I'm Joe Archino.
And I'm Mike Doody.
Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.